A hacker got access to credentials that belonged to 1Password, a security company. It turns out that Okta, the supplier of that security company, in itself also a security company, got breached somehow. Are you still following? Well, let's talk more about this. Welcome to Threat Talks. My name is Lieuwe Jan Koning, and from the Security Operations Center floor here at Ontoit, I welcome you. And the subject of today is the deep dive of the Okta threat. Let's get on to it. Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity. Let me introduce my two guests of today. On my right-hand side, it's Timmermans. He's the CISO of Ontoit, and his job is to make us secure, keep us secure. So there's compliance frameworks that help. There's actual measures that help. Let's hear about how Okta could have avoided this. And on my left-hand side, it's Rob Maas. He's the field CTO of Ontoit, and today he is explaining us all about this particular attack. Gentlemen, welcome. Rob, let's start with maybe first, what's Okta and what is 1Password? What do they do in a nutshell?
Okay, Okta is a company that focuses around identity and access management, and they can be used as an identity provider by different companies. A lot of companies are using them, like Uber and Boeing, and of course 1Password in this example. And if 1Password has internal applications, they probably all connect to Okta for the authentication. So you have just one username, password, single sign-on for all the applications, and that's provided by Okta.
Yeah, so checking username, password permissions that you don't create in your own system, you hire Okta to do that for you, and you connect your own stuff to that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And 1Password is a tool that stores passwords. As we all know, it's best practice to have a different username password for each and every website. But it's hard if you have multiple websites, which most of us have, to remember all those usernames and passwords. So we store them in a tool, and 1Password is one of these tools that can do that for you.
Everybody should have it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's 1Password over all.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, what happened here? Let's start with the timeline. How did this start?
I think the funny thing here is it's a breach with Okta, but it were the customers, in this case 1Password, that saw suspicious behavior of suspicious activity in the Okta environment of them. So they are tenant of Okta. So that's where it started.
Were they actively looking then? How do you see suspicious behavior?
Yeah, so one of the IT engineers of 1Password got a mail that somebody was requesting a list of all the administrators in the Okta environment, and nobody of that team was doing so, and nobody else had access. So that raises an alert. Hey, here's something going on that's not what we expect.
Red button.
The red button, yeah.
This sounds like a security training. You act on weird stuff that you see.
Yeah, well, you can do it as a security training, or actually prefer to do it as a training instead of the real situation when that happens. But yeah, you see that the detection, and that's also what was here the case, was that it was detected not by Okta itself, but the suspicious behavior by a customer of them, by 1Password. So that also, puts us with the first question mark in a way of, okay, and why was it that it was not detected actively by Okta itself? And typically what you want is that you will have active logging on any suspicious activities. Suspicious login attempts, or for example, if 1 minute a user logs in from Canada and 5 minutes later from India, then that's what we call impossible travel. So you want to detect and to flag that and to investigate that as soon as possible, because something may have been going on.
Well, maybe they saw it. I mean, 1Password called Okta and said, hey, something's going on. And then?
Yeah, Okta did not saw it at that time. But of course, they were triggered by 1Password and they took it very seriously. So they started the investigation. But still, they had a hard time to find evidence like this impossible travel pattern. So they were looking, and they were looking. Another company, Beyond Trust, was also calling Okta and saying, we also see, they did maybe not know from each other, but they called Okta and said, okay, we see suspicious activities going on. Is there anything going on your side? Is there a breach, etc.? Okta did not know it till then, but at least two people starting to see suspicious activity is not a coincidence. So you really start looking further.
Yeah, so it was not the credential of 1Password that got somehow stolen by from a 1Password user, but apparently from Okta. So who? What kind of role?
Yeah. So that was indeed the question at that moment. So they start further looking, how can we figure this out? And luckily in this case, Beyond Trust was able to capture an IP address that was involved with all the suspicious activity they got warnings from and what they saw. And this IP address, they of course gave that to Okta, and Okta was looking in their systems, can we find anything related to this IP address? And there was a service account that was tied to this IP address and access on 1Password, Beyond Trust, and a few other companies. So there they had at least an indicator, okay, this service account is somehow involved in this whole attack.
Yeah, the service account is something with extra powers, like for an administrator to access environments.
Yeah, this case was a service account that was used for support engineers to log into the support portal.
On behalf of the customers then?
No, not on behalf of the customers. So just to the support portal. And there are cases, like here at the SOC, we also have cases for multiple customers. And the support engineer can then work on a case for a specific customer. Yeah.
And why is that bad? what can you gain from that?
If you have access to that support portal, then you can of course retrieve all files of customers that and all the cases, and you see all the information. What in this case was the most valuable in the support portal were the HTTP archive files. And that are files that you create if you have a problem with, in this case, Okta. Then you can call the support desk and they will help you. And they probably will ask you, can you create a HTTP archive file for me? And that will record everything that's happening between the client and the Okta environment. So they can replay that and try to reproduce the problem. And then, of course, hope to come up with a solution. And these HTTP archive files, shortly called HAR files, they were stored in the support portal of Okta, and they contained all that information between the client and the Okta environment, including...
that's the part where you put passwords in. And
exactly, yeah. So there was a lot of valuable information in there. And if you have the service account, then you can download, or we could download these HAR files. And that's exactly what happened. So the adversary was able to download with the support account these HAR files, extract them, and look inside them, and they found a session token. And the attacker was able to use that session token to log in on behalf of the different customers in the Okta environment.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, so in a way, so you have this account and it has certain permissions. So that also raises the question, okay, how did the attacker get access to that account?
Exactly,
And that's I think also an interesting part, that, well, if that attacker was able to access that account and all of the environments and those HAR files from customers from an unmanaged device. So not from an Okta laptop or a company laptop or device, but an unmanaged device. And I think that's also one of the risks there, is that, okay, that should have raised at least concerns or provided an alert, because typically you do your work and you log in and you do those activities from a company device. So I think that would have been...
How did it get there, Rob?
So the interesting part in the timeline indeed is so we know now what happened, but we know not why this service account was somewhere on the internet and leaked, and how the attacker came at that account. So the investigation went on. So they disabled, of course, this service account and deleted all the sessions, so that at that moment the risk was mitigated. But still, they need to figure out, hey, how could this service account end up with this attacker? And after some investigation, they found out that the support engineer that was using that service account had used this service account while working from home on a Chrome browser. And that Chrome browser, he logged in on the Chrome browser with his personal credentials, so his personal account. And that's typically done to, if you have multiple systems where you want to sync your favorites and your web pages, but also your username passwords, there's a keychain in Chrome itself, then that will be synced with your account. And what happened was that this support engineer logged in with the service account and hopefully accidentally stored this service account in his personal keychain. This keychain was somehow compromised. We don't know exactly how, but that could be a phishing attack, could be a malware spyware, but it could also simply be that this support engineer was using the same password for his Chrome keychain than he was using on several other websites. And if one of these websites then has a data leak where you can retrieve the data, username and password, then you can simply also access the keychain.
Yeah. So the keychain was leaked somehow. We don't know exactly how. But was he working from home on a personal laptop that wasn't in
No, the laptop itself was company owned, so was of Okta.
So all security controls there, endpoint protection, firewall, VPN, all that.
We would assume. We don't know for sure, but still this minor detail is easy to overlook. Yeah,
we need a control.
Yeah, and well, probably multiple controls in this case. So you see, at least the username password was apparently then sufficient to log in and log in from whatever device and to do those activities. So some controls here would be appropriate, and I believe that Okta also, of course, as part of the root cause analysis, they analyzed this in detail and they implemented the measures. Is MFA for that service account. So even if the password or credentials are leaked, you still need that second factor to log in. Also restrict the login maybe to known devices or known networks after extra authentication layer there. And also what activities you are doing on that portal, that they are logged but also actively monitored for deviations. So if anything suspicious is taking place, that they are at least aware of that and that they look into it, because now they were just relying on notifications coming from their customers.
So maybe to add to that, so the good thing here is Okta did a good root cause and a publication of that. So also with all the lessons learned, and I think there are some good steps in there. So what they did for the session tokens, the sessions tokens that belong between 1Password and Okta, so that somebody could, with that session token, could log in to the environment of 1Password in the Okta portal. That what they did is, if somebody logs in with a different IP address now, which was not being used when creating the session token, then the session token will expire. So you need to re-log in if your IP address changed. So that's a very good measure for this case. They also implement some extra multi-factor authentication measures. If you make critical changes in an environment, you need an additional authentication. So you can...
from the customer's perspective then.
From the customer's perspective.
So completely changing, adding an administrator or that, you need to re-authenticate.
Exactly, yeah. So that's also, I think, a good measure to prevent... mitigate, if something goes wrong, then at least mitigate and prevent additional,
limited pass ratio.
Limited it,
Yeah, we need to keep in mind that especially a company like Okta, they are already taken a lot of measures and implemented a lot of controls. They even dedicated a specific page or portal listing all of their certifications, accreditations, audit reports, etc. And they did a quite good job in describing also how their security works and how they approach that. And then you see that despite having all these compliances in place, that this is a use case that apparently was unforeseen, or that was maybe out of scope of
easily overlooked. It is just this tiny detail.
And I think that could be valuable for organizations to realize that, okay, you have these compliant frameworks and certifications in place, but it also helps to validate that through use cases and to practicing actual scenarios like this, because this now happens.
Well, let's take this opportunity. So Okta had to do a postmortem. Let's do the postmortem before the incident happened. So
a pre-mortem.
A pre-mortem, yeah. So everybody is who's listening right now, maybe they're not sure whether this kind of thing would also affect them. But let's call a meeting tomorrow morning. So in the show notes, we'll have the details of this attack, so we can use it as a perfect example. Who needs to be at the table, Tim? You are the CISO tomorrow. Let's have this meeting tomorrow. Yeah. Who do we invite?
I think it's good to have the CISO from a security perspective. Also the application owner or the business owner for that environment. So the owner in this case of the portal or whatever system you are considering in the use case.
will find that person?
Yeah. It's good to have an end user as well. So in this case, will be system administrator or someone else who uses that system, because they are also maybe finding ways to make it. You want to make it foolproof and to make sure that they can still do their work. And I think someone from a more technical side, so a system or IT colleague.
Yeah, someone who knows the cybersecurity, puts himself in the mind of a hacker.
Puts himself in the mind. Well, an ethical hacker, of course, but you need the ethical hacker to think like that, and then that will be a joint effort to kind of reverse engineer from that situation. Okay, what will be critical steps for a hacker to do, and what additional controls or measures can we implement, or maybe we have that already in place that could have been preventing this.
Great. We have a plan now. So everybody who is listening in today, tomorrow we'll have that meeting. Thank you, gentlemen, for all these insights. And like I said, in the show notes, you'll see the infographics on this thread. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you heard today, please like and subscribe to this video. It allows us to spread the word more, and it will ensure that next week you'll have a next episode in your inbox, in your favorite podcast or YouTube app. And from the Security Operations Center floor here at Antwerp, thank you once again, and hope to see you next time. Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Antwerp Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.